A new report out from the Toronto Region Board of Trade this morning is calling on civic leaders to follow suit with other Canadian cities to rein in soaring development charges. So for a closer look this morning, we're joined live this morning by the Toronto Board of Trade's Giles Gerson. Giles, good to talk to you this morning about this. It's interesting, we know how expensive it is to build, in and around the GTA. Development charges are driving a lot of that. What is it that you would like to see from the Board of Trade when it comes to those charges?
I think what we really need to see is have them significantly reduced. They've grown by about 176%. It's a pretty whopping number over the last 12 or 13 years. They take in about $3.5 billion a year to pay for necessary infrastructure. You get a new housing development or condo development, there needs to be new infrastructure, water, wastewater, sometimes roads, sometimes schools. And so a lot of these costs are being borne by essentially developers who kind of pay these development charges and then pass on those costs to first-time home buyers. The buyers of new homes. Mm-hmm. And they've just become very large. And in fact, now in the GTA, about $100,000 of the cost of a new detached home would be development charges.
Yeah, that is not insignificant, especially in a place as expensive as Toronto. You point out in the report, Giles, that in Vancouver, they've managed to cut their charges by 20%. Let's compare, Vancouver and Toronto, the two biggest markets in the country. How has Vancouver done it, and what could Toronto learn from that?
Well, I think the thing to bear in mind when you sort of go back and think about development charges, they're called growth pays for growth. The problem there is that if you go back 20, 30 years, for many, many decades, this infrastructure was paid for by property taxes, income taxes, and transfers from federal and provincial governments. Those have shrunk over the decades. And so these development charges have kind of emerged as a big source of revenue to pay for these really important infrastructure. Other cities, what they've done in the United States is another great example. Municipalities will pay for water and wastewater with municipal service corporations that are funded through bonds. And the virtue of that is that, the municipality would issue a bond, or the municipal service corporation would issue a bond. In the U.S., it's tax-free, so it's a really attractive investment for regular people, for their pension funds or what have you. And you pay for that then, the infrastructure over maybe 30 or 40 years, not immediately. This front-end loading is what's causing the problem of these very costly but necessary infrastructure, and it puts all the cost, or a significant amount of the cost, right onto the buyers of new homes. That when over generations, over the next 50 years, people are going to enjoy and use that infrastructure. So why is it all going onto these the buyers of first-time homes? So that's the issue. Other cities have found different ways to take water and wastewater, take transit off. We think that transit, which is 40% of DCs in Toronto, funds transit. There are other ways of funding transit.
Yeah, well, certainly transit funding has been an issue in the city as long as I've been in this business, right? Just the whole idea of what level of government is going to help fund that sort of thing. Is just a fare box, et cetera, et cetera. I'm super curious, though, Giles, you've put out a sort of five recommendations to advance this and enhance this. Would municipalities lose in the short term or at all if these are implemented, or would they still be able to fund and do what's necessary to provide the services they require?
Well, it means you have to replace what you take out of the development charges with something else, and that's why looking at how we finance water and wastewater, which is very necessary but very costly infrastructure, how we finance transit. We think those should come out of and significantly reduce development charges, and therefore the added cost to a new home will be significantly less. And this is at a time when when construction costs have really been escalating massively since COVID, and now we're just adding this. Really, the straw is that's sort of killing the whole thing. It's a tipping point. With development charges growing as much as they are.
That's the other thing you highlight in this, which I found fascinating, Giles, is the fact we're in this situation where housing. There's a shortage. We don't have enough supply, yet more than a dozen projects in and around the GTA condo-wise have been canceled in part.
Yeah. Well, I think 18 have been canceled this year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a significant.
Well, and it's because now you've got the cost of building, including development charges, has now created a price point for housing that people just won't pay, and so therefore projects aren't financeable, and therefore you're not getting the builds. So it's going in completely the opposite direction of what governments want to see.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see what governments do with this report. That is Giles Gerson, Toronto Region Board of Trade. Giles, appreciate the conversation this morning. Thank you.